I knew something was off the moment I saw Karen marching toward my porch like she owned the entire neighborhood. Clipboard in one hand, phone in the other, sunglasses pushed so tight on her face they looked welded on. I had lived in this house for 8 years, longer than any of the HOA board, but Karen acted like I was a tenant who overstayed a weekend Airbnb booking. She didn't even knock. She slammed her hand against the door and screamed, "Open up! This is your final notice." The echo rattled my hallway frames. When I opened the door, she shoved a stack of papers into my chest with enough force to nearly knock me back. "Per HOA regulations," she declared loudly, like she was performing for an invisible camera crew, "you are in violation of Article 14, Section 3, repeated noncompliance. We are initiating eviction procedures." I laughed at first. Eviction? From my own house? I built this place from the slab up. But Karen's face didn't twitch. She wasn't joking. She genuinely thought the HOA had the power to kick me out of a privately owned home because I didn't repaint my shutters the exact shade of sunset beige number 47. Then she said the line that set the entire story in motion, "You have 72 hours to vacate, or we'll involve the courts." I stared at her, waiting for a crack in her expression, maybe a smirk, anything that showed this was a prank. Nothing. She even raised her phone and started snapping pictures of my porch like she was documenting a crime scene. She whispered into her walkie-talkie, "Suspect is non-compliant." Suspect. That's when I realized this wasn't a simple HOA disagreement. Karen had become drunk on power. I opened the packet she forced on me and nearly laughed myself unconscious. The eviction notice wasn't even legally formatted. She had printed a fake seal, misspelled 3 legal terms, and cited HOA rules that didn't exist. It was basically a fanfiction eviction. But she had signed it, Karen Roberts, HOA President and Community Enforcement Officer. Community Enforcement Officer isn't even a real thing. She made herself a title. By the end of the day, she had walked up and down the street telling every neighbor that I was being removed for habitual violations. She even told the mailman to stop delivering my mail because this residence will soon be vacant. That night, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the ridiculous paperwork, and one thought kept running through my head, fine. If Karen wants a court battle, I'll give her a real one. The next morning, I walked outside to find something unbelievable. Karen had taped bright orange eviction pending stickers across my garage door, my mailbox, and even my trash bins. Neighbors slowed their cars just to stare. One woman whispered, "Oh my God, he's really getting kicked out?" Karen strutted around like she was leading a police raid. She even carried a little bullhorn, the kind you buy for $9.99 and zero authority. "Per HOA mandate," she announced to anyone within earshot, "this property is under official removal status." My blood boiled, but I kept my cool. Karen loved drama. I was about to give her a different kind of drama, the legal kind. Instead of confronting her, I spent the morning gathering every real legal document I had, the property deed, my mortgage papers, the HOA bylaws, and a folder of emails proving she had been acting without approval from the rest of the board. The further I dug, the crazier it looked. Not only had Karen not received board authorization to issue notices, she had been bypassing them for months. She had basically turned the HOA into her personal kingdom and was handing out fines like party favors. I found an email from another board member saying, "We never approved removal actions. Karen needs to stop." Golden evidence. By noon, Karen returned to my porch like a tornado in human form. She shoved her phone in my face and said, "This is your second notice. You refused to comply, and I already filed the paperwork." I raised an eyebrow. "What paperwork?" She smirked. "You'll see it in court. I've scheduled the hearing for this Friday." I almost choked laughing. HOAs cannot schedule court hearings on their own. But if she wanted a judge involved? Perfect. I'd been waiting for the chance to expose everything she'd been doing. That afternoon, I drove to the courthouse, spoke with the clerk, and found out the truth. Karen had indeed tried to file an eviction claim, but she filled out the wrong form, left half the fields blank, and filed it under a category meant for commercial tenants. The clerk actually rolled her eyes and said, "Oh, her again." Apparently, this wasn't Karen's first attempt at playing lawyer. They scheduled a real hearing for Friday, but this time with my counterclaims included. Fraud, harassment, abuse of authority, violating HOA protocols. The list grew longer by the minute. When I walked out of the courthouse, I felt something I hadn't felt since this mess started: control. For once, I wasn't reacting to Karen's theatrics. I was building a case. And when Friday came, she wouldn't be facing a confused homeowner. She'd be facing the truth, and a judge who was already tired of seeing her name on paperwork she had no right to file. Friday arrived faster than I expected, and the courthouse lobby felt like a pressure cooker. People were waiting quietly for their cases, whispering, shuffling papers, normal stuff. Then the doors flew open, and in stormed Karen wearing a blazer 2 sizes too small and carrying a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. She stomped up to the check-in desk and loudly announced, "I'm here for the eviction trial of the non-compliant resident at 1842 Pecan Ridge." Every head turned. Even the security guard sighed like he'd seen this show before. While she was still grandstanding, I calmly handed the clerk my paperwork. The moment she read my name, her eyes lit up with recognition. "Oh yes, you're the homeowner in this case. Please head to courtroom B. The judge has already reviewed your counterfilings." I swear Karen's neck snapped toward me so fast she could have strained a muscle. "Counterfilings," she barked. "There's no counter anything. This is my case." The clerk gently corrected her. "Ma'am, the court has accepted the homeowner's claims. This is a combined hearing now." Karen's jaw dropped so far it almost hit the marble floor. Inside the courtroom, Karen positioned herself at the plaintiff's table like she was starring in a legal drama. She slammed her massive binder down and whispered loudly to the bailiff, "This will be quick." Meanwhile, I sat with my documents neatly organized, my confidence growing by the second. When the judge entered, everyone rose, except Karen, who was still fumbling with her coat sleeve. Real professional. The judge adjusted his glasses, looked at the paperwork, then looked at Karen. "Mrs. Roberts," he said slowly, "you filed for an eviction against the legal owner of a single-family residence?" Karen puffed up her chest. "Yes, Your Honor. He has repeatedly violated HOA standards and must be removed." The judge blinked. "Ma'am, HOAs cannot evict homeowners. That's not how property law works." He said it as gently as someone could while basically saying, "Are you out of your mind?" Karen tried to interrupt, but the judge lifted a hand. "No, really, where did you get this idea?" Karen confidently pushed a piece of paper toward him. "Section 14.3 of our HOA rules grants me full enforcement authority." The judge picked it up, read for 3 seconds, then let out a tiny, disbelieving laugh. "Mrs. Roberts, this is not a legal statute. This is something you typed yourself. It's not even formatted correctly." A ripple of snickering spread through the courtroom. Karen's face turned the color of expired ketchup. Before she could recover, the judge flipped to my counterclaim file, the actual legal documents, and his expression went from confused to deeply unimpressed. "Mrs. Roberts, according to these emails, you acted without board approval, issued fraudulent notices, and attempted to misuse this court's resources." Karen froze. The judge leaned forward. "We're going to take a very close look at your authority today." And just like that, the power she'd been flashing around the neighborhood evaporated. Karen's confidence evaporated the moment the judge invited her to explain herself. She stood, smoothed her wrinkled blazer, and said, "Your Honor, I was acting in the best interest of the community. This homeowner has been non-compliant for months." The judge raised an eyebrow. "According to the HOA board's emails, they say you've been acting alone." Karen's mouth opened and closed like she was buffering. She shuffled through her binder, pulling out random sheets that had nothing to do with anything. At one point, she actually handed the judge a printout of a Pinterest color palette titled "Approved Neutral Tones." The judge set it aside like it was a receipt for a sandwich. Then came the moment everything turned. The judge asked, "Mrs. Roberts, did you personally create and distribute these eviction notices?" He held up the papers she'd taped to my garage, bright orange, crookedly formatted, complete with her fake seal. Karen nodded proudly. "Yes, Your Honor. Enforcement requires initiative." The judge pinched the bridge of his nose. "Ma'am, these documents misuse legal terminology, use a counterfeit emblem, and falsely claim authority under non-existent statutes. This isn't initiative. This is impersonating a legal officer. The courtroom murmured like someone had dropped a bomb. Desperate, Karen tried to shift blame. The homeowner is disruptive. He refuses to follow rules. He questions my leadership. The judge's voice sharpened. Leadership? You are the president of a homeowners association, not a law enforcement agency. You do not have the power to remove people from their private property. Karen's face twisted into confusion and indignation. But I'm in charge, she protested. The judge stared at her for a long moment. Not here, you're not. That's when the judge turned to me. Mister, you have filed counterclaims alleging harassment, fraudulent notices, and misuse of HOA authority. Is there additional evidence? I nodded and handed the bailiff a neatly tabbed folder. Inside were screenshots, emails from board members begging her to stop, and even a video of Karen telling the mailman to stop delivering my mail. As the judge flipped through each page, Karen sank lower and lower into her chair until she was practically sliding off it. Mrs. Roberts, he finally said, why does this video show you telling a federal worker that the homeowner will be removed by force? Karen squeaked out, I was being proactive? The judge set the file down with a thud. Mrs. Roberts, what you have done is completely unacceptable. You have exceeded your authority, misled your community, and attempted to weaponize this court. He paused before delivering the line that would haunt her forever. This isn't enforcement. This is harassment. Karen's eyes widened like she had just realized she was not the hero of this story. She was the villain, and everyone in the room knew it. The courtroom was silent as the judge leaned back in his chair, staring at Karen like she was a walking cautionary tale. Then he straightened his papers and said, Here is my ruling. Karen perked up, gripping the edges of her binder like she still had a chance. She didn't. The eviction claim is dismissed with prejudice, the judge said firmly. This court will not entertain actions that are legally baseless and filed in bad faith. Karen's mouth dropped open, her face going from red to white in seconds. The judge wasn't finished. Furthermore, the court acknowledges the homeowner's counterclaims. She froze in place like a statue sinking in quicksand. The judge then delivered the blow that turned the entire room into a mix of gasps and muffled laughter. Mrs. Roberts, you are hereby prohibited from issuing any enforcement-related communication without full board approval. Effective immediately, your unilateral authority is revoked. Karen's jaw clenched so tight I thought her teeth might crack. The judge continued, Additionally, the HOA board is ordered to hold a special meeting to review your conduct. Karen blinked rapidly, realizing this wasn't just a courtroom embarrassment, this was a threat to her throne. But the real moment, the one that would be retold around the neighborhood for years, came next. The judge leaned forward, clasped his hands, and said, Mrs. Roberts, you attempted to evict a homeowner from a house he legally owns. Do you understand how absurd that is? The courtroom burst into laughter before quickly quieting down. Even the bailiff smirked. Karen sputtered, I was only trying to enforce regulations. The judge shook his head. Regulations do not override property law. Please remember, HOA rules are not the Constitution. It was the kind of line that deserved to be carved into stone. When the hearing ended, Karen tried to storm out, but reporters, yes, actual local reporters who somehow caught wind of the case, swarmed her with questions. She shoved past them, nearly tripping over her own heels. Meanwhile, the judge stepped down from the bench, came over to me, and said quietly, Son, I've been doing this job a long time, and that was one of the most ridiculous filings I've ever seen. His chuckle echoed through the courtroom. For what it's worth, you handled yourself well. I left the building feeling lighter than air. Back home, all the bright orange eviction pending stickers had been removed, not by me, but by two apologetic HOA board members who stopped by personally. We're so sorry, one of them said. She acted completely alone. We're scheduling a vote to remove her. By the next week, Karen was officially stripped of her HOA presidency. Her power trip had finally crashed. And every time I saw her walking her dog after that, she avoided eye contact like I was the judge himself. In the end, I didn't just keep my home, I helped the whole neighborhood get rid of a tyrant. And the best part? No more surprise fines. No more fake notices. No more Karen pounding on my door at 7 a.m. It was peaceful again. My property felt like mine again. And every time I step onto my porch, I remember the judge's priceless reaction, and I can't help but smile.